Edward Harrington was a self-made millionaire in his late 60s, living in a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city. He had built his fortune through shrewd investments in real estate and technology, but success had come at a cost. Betrayals from business partners, friends, and even family had left him deeply cynical. He trusted no one, especially not the people who worked for him. Over the years, he had fired several employees for minor thefts, a missing watch here, a pilfered bottle of wine there. Each incident reinforced his belief that everyone had a price, that greed lurked in every heart. His latest hire was Maria, a young woman in her mid-20s who had been working as his maid for just over 2 months. She came with glowing references from a previous employer, but Edward wasn't convinced. Maria was quiet, diligent, and always polite, arriving early and leaving late without complaint. She cleaned meticulously, prepared simple meals when needed, and never asked for anything extra. To Edward, this perfection seemed suspicious. Too good to be true, he muttered to himself one evening as he sat in his opulent study, surrounded by leather-bound books and antique furniture. The study was his sanctuary, dominated by a massive steel safe embedded in the wall behind his desk. Inside were stacks of cash, important documents, and jewelry worth hundreds of thousands. Edward guarded it obsessively, changing the combination regularly and ensuring the door was always locked. But lately, small things had gone missing around the house: a silver spoon, a pair of cufflinks. He couldn't prove it, but his suspicions fell on Maria. She was the only one with regular access to every room. One stormy afternoon, Edward decided to set a trap. He had the day off from his occasional board meetings and pretended to leave for an errand, telling Maria he would be gone for several hours. In reality, he circled back through a side entrance and hid in the adjacent library, leaving the study door slightly ajar so he could watch through the crack. His heart raced with anticipation. He deliberately left the safe door wide open, the combination lock disengaged. Inside, he had placed neat bundles of $100 bills on the top shelf, visible from the doorway, enough to tempt anyone. A hidden camera he had installed years ago for security was recording everything. As the rain pounded against the windows, Maria went about her routine. She vacuumed the hallways, dusted the living room, and finally approached the study. Edward held his breath as she pushed the door open wider, her cleaning supplies in hand. She stepped inside, humming softly to herself, oblivious to the trap. Her eyes landed on the open safe almost immediately. She froze, staring at the exposed cash. Edward leaned forward, ready to burst in and confront her. Maria set down her cloth and approached the safe slowly, as if drawn by an invisible force. Edward's mind raced. This was it, proof of her dishonesty. But instead of reaching in to grab the money, she hesitated. Her face paled, and she bit her lip, glancing around the room nervously. Tears began to well in her eyes. She whispered something to herself, too low for Edward to hear. Then, to his astonishment, she reached not for the cash but gently closed the safe door, spinning the dial to lock it. She backed away, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. That wasn't the end. Maria sat down at the desk for a moment, pulling a small notebook from her apron pocket. She tore out a page and began writing furiously. When she finished, she folded the paper neatly and placed it on the desk, right in front of the safe. Then she stood, composed herself and resumed cleaning as if nothing had happened. Edward remained hidden, stunned, his plan unraveling before his eyes. Curiosity overrode his anger. He waited until Maria left the room before slipping in to read the note. Edward unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The note was written in careful, looping handwriting. "Mr. Harrington, I saw that the safe was open. I closed it because I didn't want anyone to take what is yours. But I have to be honest, I was tempted. Not for myself, but for my little brother. He's very sick and needs an operation that we can't afford. I thought about borrowing some money and paying it back slowly from my salary. But that would still be stealing, and I can't do that. I'm sorry if this causes trouble. I will understand if you let me go. Thank you for the job. It has helped my family a lot already. Maria. Edward read it twice, then a third time. A lump formed in his throat. He had expected greed, deceit, anything but this raw honesty. Tears blurred his vision as memories flooded back, his own childhood in poverty, scraping by after his parents died young. He had clawed his way out, vowing never to be vulnerable again. But here was Maria, facing desperation, and choosing integrity over an easy way out. She hadn't taken a single bill. Instead, she confessed in writing, offering to quit rather than betray his trust. Overwhelmed, Edward sank into his chair. He replayed the camera footage, watching her close the safe, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The temptation had been real, yet she resisted. For the first time in decades, Edward felt ashamed of his cynicism. He had set out to trap her, but she had exposed the hardness in his own heart. That evening, when Maria returned to finish her duties, Edward called her into the study. She entered nervously, eyes downcast, expecting the worst. "Sir, about the note." She began, but Edward interrupted gently. "Sit down, Maria." He handed her an envelope thick with cash, far more than she would have needed for the operation. "This is not a loan. It's a gift. For your brother. And take as much time off as you need." Maria stared at the envelope, then at him, tears streaming down her face. "But why?" "I almost." Edward shook his head. "You didn't. You chose to do the right thing when no one was watching. That's rarer than any fortune I've built." He told her about his own past struggles, something he had never shared with anyone. For the first time, he saw Maria not as an employee, but as a person deserving of trust. In the weeks that followed, Maria's brother underwent successful surgery, paid for anonymously through Edward's foundation. He insisted on keeping it quiet. Maria returned to work with renewed gratitude, but their relationship had changed. Edward raised her salary substantially and encouraged her to pursue evening classes she had mentioned in passing. He even invited her family for dinner occasionally, finding joy in their simple warmth. Years later, Edward often reflected on that rainy afternoon. The trap he set to catch a thief had instead captured his own redemption. Maria's quiet honesty melted the ice around his heart, reminding him that goodness existed, even in a world he had long viewed through suspicious eyes. And whenever doubt crept in, he would open the safe, not for the money, but to see the original note, now framed and kept inside as a treasured reminder. In the end, her reaction didn't just leave him in tears, it gave him back a piece of his humanity he thought was lost forever.